Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Mexico suspends oil shipments to Cuba. The decision follows U.S. threats to impose tariffs on countries that supply the island nation. On Capitol Hill, Ghislaine Maxwell took the fifth and refused to answer any questions in a video call with lawmakers. Chair James Comer says her attorney demanded clemency from Donald Trump. Today marks the 9th day of the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie. Meanwhile, the alleged abductors want $6 million by 5 p.m. today. This week on Capitol Hill, Republicans are set to vote on the SAVE Act, a measure to create voter ID requirements and eliminate non-citizen voting. The House is pressuring the Senate, President Trump weighing in. Global reactions are pouring in after Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Lawmakers attempting to question Jeffrey Epstein's former associate Ghislaine Maxwell today amid an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. House Oversight Chair James Comer saying Maxwell invoked her Fifth Amendment rights during a 20-minute video call.
As expected, Ghislaine Maxwell took the fifth and refused to answer any questions. This is obviously very disappointing. We had many questions to ask about the crimes she and Epstein committed, as well as questions about potential co-conspirators. We sincerely want to get to the truth to the American people and justice for the survivors. That's what this investigation is about. Just to be clear, what her attorney said, Maxwell didn't say, her attorney said that she would answer questions if she were granted clemency by the President
Trump.
Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. Comer issued several subpoenas following the release of files showing Epstein's connection to a range of influential figures. Former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Epstein's former neighbor and Victoria's Secret CEO Les Wexner are among those ordered to testify. The Clintons are scheduled to be deposed on February 26th and 27th. Epstein's accountant Richard Kahn and Epstein's lawyer Darren Indyke are also scheduled to testify next month. Savannah Guthrie posted a new plea video online today as the search for her missing mother enters its second week.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation. And we need your help.
It's more than a week since the 84-year-old mother of Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie was reported missing. In a previous video message on Saturday night, Savannah Guthrie addressed the potential kidnappers and said she would pay the ransom amount for her mother's release. The final deadline from an alleged ransom note in the Nancy Guthrie case ends today at 5 p.m. That's according to a purported ransom note sent to CNN affiliate KGUN. Meanwhile, the search for Guthrie has entered its 9th day. NTD's Arlene Richards has more on what we've learned so far.
A 5 p.m. deadline looms on Monday. The alleged abductor or abductors of Nancy Guthrie say in what appears to be a ransom note sent to CNN affiliate KGUN that they want $6 million in exchange for Guthrie's release. The note reportedly demands payment in Bitcoin. The station said it also contains a threat to Guthrie's life if the deadline isn't met. Guthrie is the 84-year-old mother of NBC Today co-host Savannah Guthrie. Her disappearance enters its 9th day. Meanwhile, as the clock ticks down, the Guthrie family releasing a 3rd video on Saturday.
We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
No suspects or persons of interest have been identified.
We still have no valid two-way communication with this possible hostage taker and the author of these ransom notes. It's been all one way. And I think that both sides are probably getting a little desperate as to start that communication before that deadline comes up.
2 purported ransom notes have been sent to media outlets since Guthrie's disappearance, including one to TMZ. TMZ founder Harvey Levin told Fox News about a note his newsroom received.
What I found interesting, because we knew she wore an Apple Watch. There are pictures of her with Savannah with that watch. But they mentioned where the watch was.
Beginning Saturday and continuing today, law enforcement are conducting additional searches of Nancy Guthrie and her daughter Annie Guthrie's houses to ensure nothing was missed. Guthrie has been missing from her home since January 31st. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And joining us now to discuss the case involving Nancy Guthrie is Jimmy Graham, former CIA protective officer, veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, and founder of and CEO of Able Shepherd. Jimmy, good afternoon. So as you heard in the previous report, the family of Nancy Guthrie released another video pleading for the return of their mother, saying that they're going to pay for her release. I'm just wondering, in your opinion, is the Guthrie family making the right moves here? Anything more they can do?
You know, first of all, our thoughts and prayers go out with for Nancy and then her family. I don't want to speculate at all, so I'll just be talking as me. They've been asked for a ransom. They've offered to pay, and they haven't heard back. So, other than prayer and trying to get more information, I would be relying on professionals right now, because this isn't in our lives. Right now, I don't have a game plan. What if somebody I loved was taken? So I'd be relying on professionals, listening, and then trying to see what I could do for possibly a peaceful outcome.
So, I mean, we don't know if the ransom note is actually legitimate at this point. I mean, can you just give us your gut feelings right now?
You know, again, it's dangerous to speculate, but right now we're in a world where I was meeting with some local sheriffs recently. I was in a meeting and they were talking about people are getting angrier and more violent. So to try to make sense of nonsense just isn't a good plan. There are people that are absolutely going crazy and they want to take. So there's certain things that we just can't figure out. There's so many factors that could be. I just had a conversation with somebody at the grocery store and they're like, looks suspicious, I don't know. And we could spend all of our time speculating. It's just simply not helpful.
Okay, why do you think then there is such a lack of leads? I mean, 9 days into this investigation, there's no persons of interest, there's no footage released. Why is that?
Yeah, again, there's many cases just kind of happen under a camera. They just happen where they're now with all the cameras on whether it be traffic cams or ring doorbells or all of these things. There's pieces of footage, and it sounds like this was premeditated. It sounds somewhat professional, meaning I heard recently about a camera that was found on the roof, about the neighbors seeing something, about the actual camera on the porch deactivated. So this sounds like a professional action. So we can speculate all we want. There's just things that aren't known. So if it does happen, we're not watching the entire globe right now. So if something happens and we don't have actual facts, then everybody just starts chiming in, and those aren't the things that are helpful. I understand that professionals are working on this day and night, and I really pray and hope for a peaceful outcome.
Okay, so Savannah Guthrie said before, the greatest gift my mother gave me was faith and belief in God. It changed my whole life. So it looks like her faith, her belief in prayer has been central in dealing with the situation. Can you just talk to us about the role here that faith plays when a family goes through something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. At a time like this, that's all you have, you know? So it's like I said, know the truth and the truth will set you free. To have any peace or freedom, and I'm talking about me because I want to be sensitive to the Guthrie family. If it was me in that situation, I wouldn't want my family to be terrorized. These are terrorists who are coming into sacred spaces. Her home is it should be a safe place. In Minneapolis, people walking into a church, that's a sacred space. It's actually, federally protected as such, so that we're feeling very vulnerable. So I would want my kids, they do know the truth. They know the truth is, you can kill me physically, but you can't kill me. I know who I am and whose I am, and so does Nancy Guthrie. You can't kill me. You can kill me for now, and then I will be with my kids eternally. And there's strength in that. So I think that kind of takes some of the power away from these terrorists. And a terrorist is someone who uses, unlawful violence or a threat of violence to advance their own twisted ideological objectives. And it's going to get worse. So we need to be stronger spiritually, mentally, relationally, and physically in that order to face what's coming.
So, Jimmy, I've noticed a pattern in cases similar to Guthrie's. Whenever a family is struggling in circumstances such as this, faith always comes up. Why do you think that is?
Again, it's all they have. It's the truth, right? So what do we have to cling to? It's my faith. It's what I absolutely believe is my, who am I? Whose am I? And when my kids know that, we're operating on a different set of rules. So you can try to terrorize us. It's just not going to be as successful because we know the truth. So in the truth, it can set me free. I could have peace in that. And if you don't have that, you've got nothing. Then you will be terrorized and you will be manipulated, and then evil wins. So that just simply can't happen.
Okay, maybe you can contrast that a bit more. You said if you didn't have faith, certain things would happen. What would be the difference between someone who has faith in these types of situations and someone who doesn't?
Again, if you didn't have faith, then and somebody else is pulling my strings, my puppet strings, right? And I'm dancing around and trying to do whatever I can to make you happy. What's rewarded is repeated. What's permitted is promoted. So I'm not going to second guess what the Guthrie family is going to do because it truly is their own decision. It's their decision what they do here, and they don't need to hear from the peanut gallery right now, right? So they want to try to make the best decisions they can. And if they can go in knowing the truth about their mother, like if this, again, I want to say, if this was me, could my family say, we're going to see Dad again, and Dad wouldn't want us jumping through hoops and being terrorized, right? So potentially they can say, we're going to pray about this. We're not going to be, and I tell my kids, and I'm joking, right? When I tell my kids, when they throw a fit, I don't negotiate with terrorists. I don't, They're like, dang it, and then they have to do what's right. They don't get to play me, and they know that. So that perhaps that's a lesson for them in the future. Sure hope not.
Okay, Jimmy, maybe just one final question here. What would you be your advice to anyone who perhaps may be going through similar situations? What would you tell them? What's the most important thing you want them to know?
I would say, if you don't know where you would go, like if you died for eternity, that's an eternal question. So in preparation, we speculate. We always say it won't happen here. The answer, when the problem is people, the solution is always people, right? So people getting together and taking care of one another. That's our motto, is taking care of one another. That means spiritually, mentally, relationally, and physically. That is a solution. So getting together and getting strong in that. And then when people come and try to attack that, and then they find out it's strong and that you can't be manipulated. And you could kill my body, but you can't kill me eternally, and I'll see you guys again. That's just a much healthier place to approach this from, and it kind of takes the wings out of these terrorists that are trying to get their way. So that is true strength, and true strength can indeed set you free.
And we cannot have the terrorists get their way. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for talking with us.
God bless
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth highlighting the need to rebuild America's defense and industrial base. Here he is addressing shipbuilding workers in Maine today.
You see, for far too long under previous administrations, we had leaders who thought we could outsource our critical work to other countries, or that we could live in a so-called global environment where American skills and American factories and shipyards didn't matter anymore, or that a glacial pace of over-budget prime contractors was tolerated or the norm. Well, under President Donald J. Trump, those days are over. You see, we live in a realistic world where made in the USA and made with urgency matters. A realistic world where if you want American strength, you need to have American manufacturing. When we unleash our companies, we win. When we compete, we win. When we innovate, we win. When we go fast, we win. When we confront the status quo, as this company has been doing, we win. And that is our job at the War Department, to unleash you just as we are unleashing our warriors.
The Secretary's speech comes amid his nationwide Arsenal of Freedom tour. He'll be in Rhode Island and Maine today to visit General Dynamics, Anduril, and Bath Iron Works. The War Department calls the tour a call to action to revitalize America's manufacturing might and re-energize the nation's workforce. Through the tour, Hegseth is highlighting plans to rebuild America's defense industrial base in support of the Trump administration's agenda of peace through strength. Mexico has suspended crude oil shipments to Cuba following U.S. threats to impose tariffs on countries supplying oil to the island nation. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum criticized the Trump administration's decision.
This sanction being imposed on countries that sell oil to Cuba is very unjust, very unfair. It's not right because sanctions that affect the people are not right. You can agree or disagree with Cuba's government regime, but the people should never be affected.
Mexico became Cuba's largest oil supplier after the U.S. began seizing Venezuelan tankers in December. U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro early last month. Meanwhile, Cuba warned international airlines that jet fuel will no longer be available on the island starting tomorrow. Air Canada said it was suspending flights to the country. Cuba announced last week it would implement an emergency plan to address acute shortages. Cuba has historically relied on Venezuela for oil and gas. The country often faces power outages, blackouts, and long lines at gas stations. Meanwhile, U.S. forces boarded a vessel overnight in the Indian Ocean, demonstrating American maritime power. In a post on X, the War Department confirmed today that the military boarded the vessel without incident. Video shows troops descending from a helicopter to take control of the ship. The department said the vessel had been tracked from the Caribbean to the Indian Ocean after defying President Trump's quarantine on sanctioned ships. The post said when the Department of War says quarantine, they mean it. Officials stressed that illicit actors will not be allowed to evade American power on the seas. Lawmakers returned to Washington today with just days to find a funding solution on the Department of Homeland Security or see the agency shut down. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats are standing firm on their demands for reforms to federal immigration enforcement. He says if those demands aren't met, a DHS shutdown would be the fault of Republicans. The Democrats' list of requirements includes requiring immigration enforcement agents to wear body cameras and remove face masks, among other conditions. With the Friday deadline approaching, certain Republican lawmakers have indicated openness to some of those demands. But others' demand are seeing more pushback from Republicans. Missing Friday's deadline would not cause a full government shutdown, as the deadline is for an agreement to provide funding for just the DHS. Republicans on Capitol Hill are pushing to eliminate non-citizen voting. House lawmakers are teeing up a vote this week in a bid to pressure the Senate to act. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Republicans in Congress doubling down on an effort to require voters to show ID to vote in all elections.
You look around the world, upwards of 90% of democracies require voter ID. The idea that you wouldn't have it would probably seem bizarre to most people.
It's an effort to root out non-citizen voting, which critics argue is an issue that should be left to the states.
Every state should be allowed to decide the best way to proceed to ensure that there's a free and fair election. Here in New York, there are, in fact, voter identification requirements. The question is that the
SAVE Act would set federal standards for voting requirements, which in some cases could help states enforce laws they already have on the books.
when people talk about wanting to respect states and their sovereignty, I say I'm 100% for that. The SAVE Act will stop the federal government from interfering with our ability to require that everybody on the voter rolls be a citizen of the United States.
While voter ID is a popular idea among voters from all parties, Democrats in Congress have repeatedly blocked the measure from advancing. This week, House lawmakers are ramping up the pressure on their Senate colleagues.
The problem is Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have been blocking it. So now we're calling on Leader Thune to change this and to force what we call a talking filibuster so that we can force a vote on the Senate floor.
A talking filibuster would require steep commitments from both sides of the aisle. The goal is to open up an unlimited floor debate until one side gives, allowing for a simple majority vote and sidestepping the need for Democrat support. President Trump on Friday weighing in.
I'd love to use the filibuster. The SAVE Act is very important. Voter ID, I mean, if you look at it, no mail-in voting, and you have to have proof of citizenship. Everybody wants it.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune has not committed to taking the time-consuming approach. Instead, he's aiming to attach the SAVE Act to the must-pass bill to fund the DHS.
We will get a vote on the SAVE Act at some point, and I'm not sure exactly what that context will be. It might be, maybe it's in the context of voting on the DHS bill if something's agreed upon. But there will be...
Lawmakers face an end-of-the-week deadline to fund the DHS and prevent another partial government shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The Trump administration is warning of big potential social services fraud in Maine. The administration's top health official suggests it could be as big as Minnesota's recent welfare scandal. Medicare and Medicaid Administrator Dr. Oz said yesterday on businessman John Katsimatidis' radio show this is another big crisis that looks a lot like Minnesota. It comes after Maine Republicans sounded the alarm. Late last year, a whistleblower alleged millions of dollars had gone missing from the state's Medicaid program. Just like in Minnesota, Dr. Oz alleges this fraud is also connected to the state's Somali population. Investigators estimate over $1 billion had been redirected from social services programs in Minnesota. According to Oz, Minnesota and Maine are just two among many cases of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. He has repeatedly named California as one of the worst offenders, prompting pushback from Governor Gavin Newsom. The Trump administration's top Medicare official is urging Americans to get vaccinated as measles cases rise across the country, especially in South Carolina. CMS Administrator Dr. Oz said yesterday measles is a disease where vaccination is particularly important. Federal data shows hundreds of cases already reported this year, most involving people who did not receive a measles vaccine. CDC figures show South Carolina accounts for the majority of those infections. Oz also stressed that access to the MMRA vaccine is widely covered under federal health programs. At the same time, the Department of Health and Human Services told the Epoch Times that vaccination decisions should still be discussed between families and their doctors. Nurses in New York City have reached a tentative agreement with two major hospital systems to end a nearly month-long strike. The healthcare workers have been demanding more staffing, protections against workplace violence, and a pay increase. The tentative deal involves the Montefiore and Mount Sinai hospital systems. New York Presbyterian said it agreed over the weekend to a proposal presented by mediators. Around 4,000 nurses remain on strike at New York Presbyterian. The walkouts began January 12th, leaving the hospital scrambling to hire temporary nurses to fill in. The new union said members at Montefiore and Mount Sinai will vote on contracts this week. The 3-year deal affects roughly 10,000 of the 15,000 nurses on strike. The current strike represents the largest and longest nurses' strike in city history. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. marks 1 year of the Make America Healthy Again project. He spoke at the Heritage Foundation earlier today. Here's more from the event.
Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. celebrates the first year of the Make America Healthy Again project on Monday. He touts the reforms he initiated, including reducing synthetic food dyes, inverting the food pyramid, and releasing new dietary guidelines.
You can summarize it in 3 words: eat real food. And we took the politics out of it, And we made science-based, gold standard science-based recommendations. And these are recommendations that are going to keep us healthy.
Kennedy says his agency plans to remove all 9 synthetic petroleum-based food dyes from the food supply by the end of this year. The secretary highlights the health impacts of ultra-processed food and the importance of diet in preventing chronic diseases.
The costs to our society are existential. 77% of our children can no longer qualify for military service, and most of that is diet related. And we need to change what we're feeding these children, or we're going to lose our country.
Regarding the healthcare industry, Kennedy says HHS is focusing this year on affordability and transparency.
Prior authorization is now gone. You will have an answer at point of care. In other words, before you leave that doctor's office, you will know whether your insurance company is going to pay for it.
The health secretary thanks President Trump for putting him in this role and initiating the MAHA project. He says he has been screaming about children's health with nobody paying attention for 20 years.
I was censored and shut down, and I prayed every single day that God would put me in a place where I could fix this. And so for me, when President Trump asked me to join his campaign in August of 2024, it felt providential. It felt like the answer to prayers.
Other MAHA achievements that the HHS is celebrating include lowering prescription drug prices, updating the childhood vaccine schedule, researching autism treatments, bringing back physical fitness, and withdrawing from the World Health Organization.
Witness the revival. Experience the extraordinary. Live on Stage returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Get your tickets now at shenyun.com.
To discuss 1 year of MAHA and RFK Jr.'s role at HHS, joining us is Dr. Ryan Cole, Senior Fellow at Independent Medical Alliance, board-certified anatomic and clinical pathologist, and we have Jeffrey Tucker, founder and president of the Brownstone Institute and senior columnist for the Epoch Times. So thank you both for joining us today. Now, if we're looking across the year, we've seen many changes, including to dietary guidelines, childhood immunization recommendations, getting synthetic dyes out of foods, and others. So what actions stood out to you the most, Dr. Cole?
We've seen some fundamental changes, which is fantastic. The big moneyed interests, I think, are on the ropes to a degree in the sense that they realize Americans have woken up. The regulatory capture, and that's basically the financial interest within the agencies, has been exposed. And I think when we look at those things you listed, in addition to the ability now for physicians to speak out against whether it be the mRNA or against policies within larger organizations, I think we're seeing a big sea change within free speech as well. And doctors, independent doctors, advocating for their patients. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg of what can be accomplished by HHS and this administration.
So Jeffrey, Dr. Cole says this is the tip of the iceberg of what can be accomplished. I want to hear from you now. What stood out to you this year? What's at the top of the list?
Well, I think Dr. Cole is right. We've got a good, solid beginning, but you also have to understand the immensity of the problems. We have a gigantic pharmaceutical cartel that had essentially captured every agency under HHS, including HHS itself, FDA, and NIH and CDC. So that's been the job number one, was just untangling all of the industry interests that have been essentially in charge of these things. These RFK and his team are kind of trying to engage in something like a hostile takeover of these agencies to return them to the interest of the people as opposed to an industry. So that's been the overarching framework, and that has impacted a whole range of areas, including, yes, child immunizations, which is an ongoing struggle that we're going to see throughout the rest of the year, struggles on that. But then also he's worked, I would say the Trump administration has worked fairly well with Congress on some much needed reforms to the health insurance system and kicking that in the right direction. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but the trajectory is in the right direction. But I want to say a few words about Trump RX, which is kind of a prescription drug portal, which I didn't really understand it at first what was going on here. Why would the president have his own drug company run under the government's auspices to sell directly to consumers? Like, it wasn't really making sense. Until I looked at the economic model of it, and I tell you, the whole thing is strangely brilliant. By way of background, pharmaceutical prices in this country are beyond belief out of control as compared with the rest of the world. The same drug sold within the U.S. can be 10 times the price that it's sold in other countries. So Trump put out an executive order saying this is terrible. Insofar as the government has anything to do with it, we're going to be buying at the lowest international market price for these drugs, period. That's it. Well, that caused panic, and then also a real stonewalling by the industry. They didn't want to cooperate. So finally, Trump just went all the way, because he's not going to accept no for an answer, and just created his own portal. And the economic model of Trump RX is identical to Costco. So what Costco does is say, look, we have a great, very loyal customer base. We sell a lot of product. We'll carry your product so long as you brand one of the products as a Costco product and let us sell it for cheaper right next to your product. And companies, so there's no force involved really, but the companies go along with it just because they want it done. So Trump is using the same model for prescription drugs, as far as I understand it, buying them from all over the world and generic replacements for high-priced prescription drugs, and getting prices from them based on, like, look, we don't have to be doing any business with you. Medicare doesn't have to deal with you. Maybe we'll even consider some tariffs on your country, but we've got a big market. Why don't you sell to us at a reasonable price? You can still make profits, but you're not going to make unjust profits, exploitative profits, outrageous profits, but we're going to start taking care of the consumer now. So just seemingly out of nowhere, we've got a website now where every American can just type in Trump RX. It's easy to remember, right? So there's that. Type in the drug that you're paying ridiculous prices for, either through your insurance or out of pocket, and buy it directly from the government at sometimes a tenth the price that was being charged just a few months ago. So I don't know. This could be one of the most brilliant government programs I've ever seen. And again, to those people who say, well, no, this is nationalization of the pharmaceutical companies. This is socialism, whatever. No, it's not. These companies are charging outrageously exploitative prices based on their government patents, and they're pillaging the American consumer and letting everybody else in the world buy cheaply. Okay, so now Trump's just getting for American citizens what the rest of the world gets.
Okay, so Dr. Cole, I want to get your comments as well on Trump RX. But before I do, I brought a clip here with me of Mark Cuban at a Senate hearing last October. Let's take a look at that clip.
And so we're excited to offer them our API so that they'll be able to download our daily prices. So when they go down, everybody benefits.
So Dr. Cole, how significant is this new prescription program for America in your view?
I think it's a step in the right direction. Independent physicians, and as a senior fellow with the Independent Medical Alliance, this is what we've been pushing for, is transparency in pricing and the ability for the patient to make the choice. Pharma wants more of a one-size-fits-all plan for patients, and we, as independents, know that each patient is unique and different. So this drives the costs downward, as Jeffrey was saying, but at the same time, it opens up the opportunity for patients to have more options. Now, this currently only applies to brand name drugs, a lot of which are going off-label and towards generics. So I like the direction this is headed. I think this will benefit many patients. It's a cash pay only plan at the moment, so people need to be cognizant of that. They have to go and get a coupon, and it basically applies to a lot of the diabetes drugs, weight loss drugs, asthma drugs, maybe about 40 medicines so far, but it's going to expand. So we need to codify this into law. The transparency, I think, is what's better than anything. When you go to a restaurant, you know what you're paying. When you go get your oil changed, you know what you're paying. This at least lets the consumer know they have a choice as to what they're paying. Is it perfect? No. But is it a wonderful step in the right direction? I do believe so.
So, Dr. Cole, what do you say to those concerns that this is federalization? How do you address that?
Well, it's, as Jeffrey said, from an economic point of view, it's basically making the price a most favored nation pricing. We've been subsidizing much of the world for many years, and we've heard complaints from many European nations that say, well, it's going to make the cost of our drugs go up. Well, I think in America, we never agreed to foot the bill for others' medicine use. It's basically economics. It's supply and demand, and we're not going to allow ourselves to be ripped off, as it were, anymore. We're going to pay what others are paying. So I think it's equalizing the playing field in a good direction for the American consumer.
So, Jeffrey, can I talk to you about the topic of eating real food? Because RFK Jr. brought this up during his speech at the Heritage Foundation. In your view, how much of a difference is this going to make? And how long are we going to how long is it going to take before we start to see the impact of this among the health of the nation?
I don't know. I can't comment on that because Dr. Cole's much better position to say something like that. But I'm thrilled about it in so many ways for the American consumer, for the American farmer, for just American culture in general. Processed food has become the American diet, and it's sad. And to have Mike Tyson, give that great endorsement, on the Super Bowl was a brilliant thing. And this is something that that food activists have been fighting for decades, and nobody has been able to do anything about it. Now we've got a beautiful website. We've flipped the food pyramid upside down. I think it's going to, quite frankly, save a lot of lives and improve a lot of lives. I grew up at a time where the food pyramid was upside down. And I saw my friends and family get lied to about a diet, and I saw the consequences of that. It was tragic. I bore them as a little boy in public school, suddenly being forced to eat soy burgers and having my milk taken away from me, and all these terrible things, or being afraid of eggs, this kind of stuff. So finally, and everybody knows this was a terrible error. So finally, we've got RFK out there doing something about it. And I hope that it helps American health and American farmers and local food, the cause of local food, and just diet in general.
Okay, Dr. Cole, can we get your professional analysis here? Fill in the blanks for us on how much difference this is going to make, eating real food.
It's going to make a huge difference. It's a step also in the right direction. As an organic farmer, I run a small organic farm. It's very encouraging to me. Most Americans are very trusting of government and systems. They don't understand the inputs into that food system, and getting certain chemicals, herbicides, pesticides out of our foods, getting back to the basics of health instead of synthetic processing is going to make a big impact. It is going to take a couple years until we see it, yes, but the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and this is a big step. And this again goes back to transparency and allowing the American consumer to understand how perverted the system has been for decades. So are we going to see an overnight change? Most likely not. But in a couple of years, the consciousness of the individual knowing that the most important medicine is what they have at the tip of their fork or their spoon, I think is going to become part of the daily zeitgeist. And, perhaps we put a sticker of Kennedy on the inside of our fridge to remind us to eat healthy or something like that in a joking manner. But no, I think it's a wonderful step in the right direction. But it starts with each individual taking personal responsibility and going forward with these good guidelines.
Okay, I would want that sticker on my fridge. I don't know about you guys. But let's go on to another topic, Jeffrey. So you're aware of this. They ended HHS-funded research that used human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Your thoughts on that? Is this important?
The research end of NIH and HHS has been completely out of control for so many years. It's just been this laissez-faire system where you can do whatever you want to, whomever you want, and this has led to, yes, fetal tissue and mercury in vaccines, and gain-of-function research unleashing dangerous pathogens on the world. So finally, we're getting some standards, some professional standards here that. Particularly on this fetal tissue issue, it's deeply offensive to many people's moral sensibilities that this has been going on. So we've still here again. We've got a long way to go. These are, we need to understand these are huge systems with long legacies that go way back, and there's never been any real accountability, and we've got a handful of people and their staff trying to turn around this ship and turn it in a more rational, scientific, and humane direction. And I have to say, after just 1 year, they've made probably more progress than any other administration ever has. It's not enough. Many of us are still frustrated that we've got such a long way to go, but at least they're headed in the right direction. I think this is very good.
Okay, Dr. Cole, what do you think about this issue?
Again, I agree with Jeffrey. It speaks to the moral sensibility of probably over half the nation. And when we do put things in our body, we want to know those things are pure, haven't been adulterated, and haven't come to us for benefit from the harm of others. So from a Hippocratic point of view, to first do no harm, many of these research protocols have depended on harm. Newborn or a harm to early life. And so I think people, with technology, with AI, with other cell culture abilities, we don't have to use fetal tissue in research. There's so many other ways to get to the same conclusions without using something that's going to be morally offensive to many. So I think it's a great step in the right direction. Again, it needs to be codified over time.
Okay, well, let's leave it there today. Thank you both for commenting on the issues today.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
A 30-second advertisement promoting Trump accounts aired during the Super Bowl pregame broadcast. To talk about the Trump accounts, we're joined by Daniel Lacalle, chief economist at Tressis Hedge Fund, international financial analyst, and author of the book Freedom or Equality. Daniel, good afternoon. So about these Trump accounts, children born between 2025 and 2028 are eligible to receive a $1,000 seed contribution from the Treasury. And these accounts are intended to help families save for long-term financial goals, right? But the actual value realized depends on contributions and performance of the investment. So talk to us about what do you think are the benefits here of these Trump accounts?
I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Don, because one of the biggest challenges right now in the public discourse and in the political debate is this widespread perception that people are getting rich in the stock market and the Main Street is not seeing anything of it. And I think that it is a great way of encouraging citizens to save, to invest, to check their portfolios to see that they're doing better. And I think it's also something that has worked wonderfully in countries, for example, like Chile, in which the day-to-day realization that with some investment and some saving, you can get much better results than hoping that the government or the state provides some sort of support is very, very powerful in terms of the perception about how wealth is generated, how wealth is created. Instead of all this propaganda that we read every day in social media saying that the problem of the United States is billionaires, what you can see is actually that you can benefit significantly from the stock price performance of those companies that are generating at the same time wealth and jobs. So I think it's a great idea, and it worked beautifully in many countries, particularly in Chile, that I remember.
So I do wanted to talk to you about the returns here, but I brought a clip here with me of part of the ad that was played during the Super Bowl, and if you wouldn't mind, just take a look at it.
This year, every American child gets an investment account, and millions will be pre-funded. That's free money. We can all expand the American dream. Sign me up.
So this $1,000, how much could it grow by the time a child, let's say, is around college age, considering historical stock market returns?
Oh gosh, think about it. How many times have you read that if you had invested $1,000 in the IPO of Nvidia or the IPO of Amazon, you would be a millionaire today? Well, obviously, if you look at the compounded returns of the S&P 500, you can check that the returns of those $1,000 would pay for college to many of these children. I mean, we need to think about the exceptional thing that is compounded interest and how reinvestment of dividends, how the stock price performance ends up generating a lot more wealth than what citizens would achieve by simply waiting to see if the government gives them something, if the government does. No, I think it's a clear indication that citizens can reach for a better environment in which they can pay for college, in which they can pay for their projects, for start making their own business, whatever that is required. But also very important is that it creates independent citizens that are able to think for themselves instead of being awashed by propaganda that says that corporations are evil and things like that.
So, Daniel, I want to address a point I think you might have alluded to in your first response in this conversation. So today I saw an interesting article about the Trump accounts where the author argues that this program can help counter rising support for socialism because it can teach young people the benefits of capitalism through ownership, building personal wealth, and investment. What do you think about that?
I think it's actually quite right. A lot of the socialist propaganda that is spread in colleges and schools and in the media these days tends to focus on two things: envy and hatred. No, which is basically the same thing. Envy of those that have done well, envy, and also the belief that the reason why people may be suffering or may be having a tougher environment in terms of their day-to-day cost of living is because of people that have done well, this sort of zero-sum game of the economy. What investing and being financially independent gives to citizens is the tools to understand that capitalism is the way to reduce poverty and to improve wealth, and that what is certainly the road to serfdom is to believe that it's going to be the state that provides. Obviously, we all believe in a state that gives a certain number of public services for the people that are more disadvantaged, but I think that what is absolutely essential right now is that people stop believing in this fallacy of a zero-sum game economy. And they start to understand that what is driving wealth and what is driving improvement in the economy are precisely those companies that are thriving in the stock market and doing a very good job for all of those that have invested in them.
So a couple more things here, Daniel. Would you characterize this program as pro-family? And how does this compare to previous administrations where the government just gives you money to spend, cash?
Yeah, it's much better. It's much better to give money to people so that they invest and they see the fruits of that investment. They get excited. They understand that they're getting richer and that they're getting better and that they can achieve to purchase the things that they require in the future, that they can that by investing properly and wisely, they can buy themselves a home, they can fund tuition, college tuition, all these things. I think that this is much better than giving people a check to spend, and it's much better for the economy long term. Furthermore, this is not just pro-family, it is pro-independent citizens that have the ability to manage their own life, and they have the ability to understand how to become more successful by investing instead of demonizing the stock market.
And just finally, Daniel, could you address criticisms here that Trump accounts could widen wealth gaps?
I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. It's the opposite, no? It's the opposite. Everybody that is talking about this massive wealth gap is using a very stupid fallacy, to be fairly honest, which is the fallacy of paper wealth, which is to account for the wealth of the billionaires of America as if it was fully fungible and in cash when it is invested in the stock market. So if those people say that that these millionaires and billionaires have made their fortune by seeing their stocks soar, what this does is to actually reduce the gap, which is to allow citizens to become investors instead of just wage earners and deposit savers.
Okay, Daniel, great comments as always. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
More on the Super Bowl. The competition wasn't limited to the field. Two competing halftime events went head-to-head. The NFL's traditional show and a conservative-backed alternative. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the highlights.
And this one's for you, Charlie.
With those words, conservative commentator Jack Posobiec paid tribute to the late Turning Point USA co-founder while debuting the organization's All-American halftime show. That was just moments before Bad Bunny took the stage at Levi's Stadium at the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, California. The dueling halftime performances date back to last year, when the NFL named Bad Bunny to headline the halftime show in September. The rock band Green Day was added to lead the opening ceremony. Both acts have openly criticized President Trump. The NFL's decision motivated Turning Point USA to create the All-American halftime show as an alternative. It described its show as providing entertainment for viewers that celebrate American culture, freedom, and faith. Kid Rock was the most notable name in Turning Point USA's event. Here he is on Fox News discussing the show.
They realize there's a big portion of this country, like it or not, that's underserved entertainment-wise. And, we're just going to go play for our base, people who love America, love football, love Jesus.
Rock added a verse to Cody Johnson's Till You Can't in an emotional tribute to Charlie Kirk. The Turning Point show also showcased performances by country singers Lee Brice, Brantley Gilbert, and Gabby Barrett. The NFL has stood by having Bad Bunny host the halftime show amid pushback from conservatives. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell called him one of the great artists in the world before the Super Bowl. Before the dueling shows, social media lit up with chatter from supporters of both artists. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said he was excited to watch Kid Rock in the All-American Super Bowl halftime show. Former President Barack Obama's Obama Foundation posted, "From one natural-born U.S. citizen to another, have a great Bonito Bowl." War Secretary Pete Hegseth greeted the audience with a video clip.
From the War Department, we salute Turning Point USA and every American who still believes freedom is worth defending. Thank you for your courage as an organization, your clarity, and your leadership. And for this halftime show that the War Department is proud to support.
Turning Point USA on Saturday posted on X a video featuring Kirk discussing the Super Bowl.
When you have the most televised event, this is true, most televised event for the entire year, one of the most televised events on the planet, by the way, that should be a reflection of the virtue that hopefully you want society to embody.
Bad Bunny is Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio. He has been an outspoken critic of federal immigration law enforcement efforts by the Trump administration. He was born and raised in Puerto Rico. He often wears a dress when performing and primarily sings in Spanish. He was Spotify's most streamed artist globally in 2025. In September 2025, he said that he would not perform in the United States because of ICE operations. Bad Bunny's halftime show included performances from special guests Alex Earl and Cardi B, and Ricky Martin, among other stars who appeared on stage. Lady Gaga made a cameo and danced with the headline artist before her performance of Die With a Smile. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt last week chimed in on which show, Bad Bunny or Kid Rock, President Trump would prefer.
I think the president would much prefer a Kid Rock performance over Bad Bunny, I must say that.
Trump called Bad Bunny's halftime show absolutely terrible. The president said the dancing was disgusting, especially for young children. Nearly 6 million people watched the Turning Point All-American halftime show. The Super Bowl usually has over 100 million viewers. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to meet President Trump in Washington on Wednesday. The two are expected to discuss negotiations with Iran following indirect talks between U.S. and Iranian officials on Friday. Netanyahu's office said in a statement that any negotiations must include limitations on ballistic missiles and a halting of the support for the Iranian axis. The meeting on Wednesday will be the 7th between the two leaders since Trump took office. Vice President J.D. Vance is visiting Armenia and Azerbaijan this week. He will push a Washington-brokered peace deal that could reshape energy and trade in the South Caucasus. He began a two-day visit to Armenia today. The trip comes 6 months after a White House agreement aimed at ending nearly 40 years of conflict. Vance is promoting the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. That's a 25-mile corridor linking Azerbaijan to its separate Western territory and Turkey. The corridor could connect Asia to Europe, bypass Russia and Iran, and give the West access to critical minerals. Analysts say even small U.S. attention can make a big difference in the region. Vance met with the Armenian Prime Minister earlier today. They signed a joint statement on peaceful nuclear declaration between their two nations. Here's what he said about the benefits of the project for the local people.
The TRIP fund, what it will do is means that a lot of private capital is going to flow into building railroads, into building pipelines, and again, to building the interconnectedness that will create real prosperity for the region, but also allow the peace agreement to stick.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead a delegation of U.S. officials to the Munich Security Conference this coming weekend. The head of the annual gathering of security experts and policymakers shared the news today.
In my view, transatlantic relations are currently experiencing a significant crisis of confidence and credibility. That is why it is particularly gratifying that the American side is taking such a keen interest in Munich.
The conference chair also said he expects more than 50 U.S. members of Congress to attend, as well as the governors of Michigan and California. He also addressed last year's accusations from Vice President J.D. Vance, who accused European leaders of censoring free speech. The chair said he expects Secretary Rubio to focus on U.S. foreign policy. President Zelensky is expected to lead the Ukrainian delegation. The Ukrainian people will be given a special award that is normally given to an individual. And just a quick look now at the weather. Conditions over much of the east are still freezing, but relief is on the way at least. Forecasters say winds will slowly subside during the week and temperatures will gradually start to rise. In New York, the temperature went down to 3 degrees yesterday, with wind chills making it feeling closer to -14. In other parts of the Northeast, the feels-like temps went down to -40. Fortunately, forecasters say the temperature will increase every day this week and move into the 40s by Wednesday. A 30-second advertisement promoting Trump accounts aired during the Super Bowl. The purpose of the ad was to raise public awareness about the program and encourage families to sign up. We have analysis and more coming up.
They tried to silence us. But 5,000 years cannot be erased.
A lost world reborn. Timeless. Divine.
Skier Lindsey Vohn's Olympic crash, which came while she was still recovering from an earlier accident, has ignited a debate over who decides when an injured competitor is fit to compete. Here's the story.
Skier Lindsey Vohn's crash on Sunday's Olympic downhill is raising bigger questions about who decides when an injured competitor is fit to race. The 41-year-old American took the start line just a week after rupturing knee ligaments in a World Cup accident in the Swiss resort of Crans, Montana. She trained with a knee brace and posted the third fastest run on Saturday, but on race day she suffered a devastating fall and was airlifted to a hospital with a broken leg. Vaughn had said she felt strong enough to compete after days of therapy and medical consultations. But some experts say skiing needs clearer protocols governing when a competitor can return to racing, perhaps modeled on rugby's rules for players with concussion. International Ski and Snowboard Federation representative Peter Girdal says injuries are part of the sport.
Well, I think it was a mistake of the racer, as most of the times happen. The course was maybe bumpy, or it's an Olympic medal race, so it has to be a challenging downhill, and most of the athletes managed really well. So if there are some mistakes from time to time, this happened in our sport, and unfortunately happened to Lindsey Vonn and to Cande Moreno. We have two athletes that unfortunately injured.
Girdal says return to play decisions currently fall on national federations, not the international ski body. Norway, for instance, barred its own injured skier Marte Monsen from starting on Sunday. Athletes themselves are split. Some defend personal choice, while others worry about the example it sets for younger competitors. Italian skiing legend Alberto Tomba says Vaughn's drive to compete was understandable, but misguided.
She shouldn't have raced in Crans-Montana, as I said. After Tarvisio, the last podium, her last victory, she should have come here at the end of January and trained. But for an athlete, it's not easy to decide something like that. When you feel in good shape, you want to keep winning. One race leads to another.
An enthusiastic German biathlete celebrating his team's third-place finish had his bronze medal break over the weekend. One of his teammates recounted the incident as they celebrated their achievement.
Yes, we did get together again as a whole team in the evening for a small celebration. We were also allowed to do an entrance into the hotel again. Justus Strelo immediately took advantage of this to jump and dance again. Unfortunately, the medal broke at that moment. But I hope and I believe that not much was missing and that it can be put back together relatively quickly. So, yes, there was a little damage, but I think it will all be fixable.
Germany took third place in the mixed relay biathlon at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Italy on Sunday. France won the event, with Italy coming in second. During celebrations following the event, the medal of one of their German biathletes broke. Several other athletes reported that their medals had come off their bands. So far, Germany has won 3 medals at the Winter Olympics: a gold medal in luge, a silver medal in alpine skiing, and 1 bronze medal in biathlon. The Super Bowl wasn't the only big game yesterday. A few hours before, more than 150 puppies gathered to take part in the Puppy Bowl.
Puppy Bowl 22 is back underway. Fluff's Apple and Ruff's Clementine battle for possession of the toy.
Apple and Clementine. Maybe we should call this the Fruit Bowl?
Just wait until Fluff's Strawberry is on the field. And it's Apple who gains possession of the toy.
Team Ruff and Team Fluff went back and forth in the match, but in the end, Team Fluff won their second consecutive championship, taking home the Lombardi Trophy. The final score was Team Fluff 73 and Team Ruff 69. Boba from Team Fluff earned the MVP award, Most Valuable Puppy, and the Puppy Bowl helps raise awareness for animal shelters and rescue groups across the country. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi vowed to deliver on her campaign pledges today after an election win over the weekend. She spoke in Tokyo after a party won a record majority of hers.
We have no time to bask in the afterglow of victory. With the cooperation from the opposition parties, I will call for a special parliamentary session to pass the budget-related bills, including the next year's budget sooner rather than later.
Takaichi has pledged to revise Japan's defense policies in favor of offensive military capabilities, vowing to lift a ban on weapons exports. The Japanese Prime Minister has said she aims to address the high cost of living by suspending a sales tax on food. Takaichi has also been pushing for tougher immigration policies as part of her reform. President Trump is congratulating Japan's Prime Minister after her coalition secured a decisive election victory. In a post on Truth Social yesterday, Trump weighed in and wished Sanae Takaichi great success, praising what he called her conservative peace through strength policy agenda. Trump said that Takaichi's party holds a historic two-thirds supermajority in the Japanese parliament for the first time in decades. He also wrote that it was his honor to endorse her. Takaichi responded on X thanking Trump for his message and signaling plans to visit Washington. She described the potential of the Japan-U.S. alliance as limitless. The big win is paving the way for Takaichi's agenda, which aims to boost Japan's economy and military capabilities to counter China. The top commander of NATO in Europe says the alliance is planning for a possible Arctic mission. NATO is planning to strengthen security in the north and amid increasing Chinese-Russian activity.
Continued Russian presence and increasing Chinese presence that's there. I think it's been reported widely that we're doing some planning now on a new Arctic mission called Arctic Sentry. That has not kicked off yet, but we're in the final stages of planning for that enhanced vigilance activity.
The move comes as President Trump keeps highlighting the need to secure the Arctic, especially Greenland. Trump says a strong U.S. presence in Greenland is crucial to defending against threats from China and other adversaries. Trump previously pointed to the fact that Washington protected Greenland during World War II, saying the U.S. should have kept its presence there rather than handing control over back to Denmark. And now to Hong Kong, where Jimmy Lai, an important pro-democracy voice and outspoken critic of the Chinese Communist Party, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. Hong Kongers and the world are reacting strongly to the sentence. Here's the story.
A court in Hong Kong has sentenced media founder and critic of China's Communist Party Jimmy Lai to 20 years in prison. A panel of judges sentenced Lai under the city's national security law, a law imposed by the Chinese regime in 2020. Lai, who started the pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily, was convicted in December last year of colluding with foreign forces and publishing so-called seditious material. Before his sentencing Monday, he had already spent years in custody. Supporters had been lining up outside the courthouse for days, hoping to see him in person.
I think the Hong Kong situation now is like today's weather, gray and covered with dark clouds. Apple Daily was the only platform which carried the voice of the Hong Kongers.
Today's sentence brought no relief. The judges spared Lai the maximum penalty of life in prison, but for the 78-year-old, 20 years could still mean he remains in prison for the rest of his life. Lai's family says his health has worsened during years of detention. His son called the punishment devastating for the family and life-threatening for his father. The ruling prompted immediate criticism from press freedom advocates. Jody Ginsburg, CEO of the Committee to Protect Journalists, said in a statement, "The rule of law has been completely shattered in Hong Kong." The Asia director of Human Rights Watch, Elaine Pearson, said Lai's sentence is effectively a death sentence. She added Lai's years of persecution shows the Chinese government's determination to crush independent journalism and silence anyone who dares to criticize the Communist Party. Edward Lee, a former chief breaking news editor for Apple Daily, said Lai's prison sentence was shocking.
The words I've heard the most today are, "There's nothing more to say." Everyone has reached a point where they're completely lost for words. When you see this verdict, you really don't know what else you can say.
Senator Rick Scott said in a statement, Jimmy Lai was unjustly sentenced by Communist China to 20 years in prison for the crime of daring to think differently from the CCP and refusing to use his newspaper to spread CCP propaganda. Taiwan's government condemned the harsh sentence and called for Lai's release. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council said Lai's sentence under Hong Kong's national security law not only deprives him of his personal liberty and tramples on freedom of speech and press freedom, but also denies the people's basic right to hold those in power accountable.
The State Department responded to Jimmy Lai's verdict today. It calls the Hong Kong court's sentencing an unjust and tragic conclusion to the case, adding that, quote, "It shows the world that Beijing will go to extraordinary lengths to silence those who advocate fundamental freedoms in Hong Kong, casting aside the international commitments Beijing made in the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration." The department says the U.S. urges authorities to grant Lai humanitarian parole. Britain announced it's expanding its visa route for Hong Kongers, allowing children of British national status holders to move independently. The British foreign minister called for Lai to be released on humanitarian grounds, citing ongoing deterioration of rights and freedoms in Hong Kong. Japan expressed serious concern over the impact on freedom of speech. Tokyo warned that trust in the one country, two systems framework continues to be undermined. The European Union demanded Lai's immediate release, calling the prosecution politically motivated. Australia criticized the sentence and urged Beijing to stop suppressing free expression and reconsider the national security law. Joining us now to discuss is human rights activist Benedict Rogers. He's the co-founder and chair of Hong Kong Watch, senior director at Fortify Rights, and author of the book, The China Nexus. So Ben, thank you again for joining us today. Why is the sentence given to Jimmy Lai so severe? I can't help wonder if there's a point the Chinese regime is trying to make.
I'm sure the Chinese regime is trying to make a point. They're trying to make an example of Jimmy Lai and create an atmosphere in Hong Kong, which of course already for the last 5 years has been under severe repression, but they want to create an even more chilling atmosphere. And I suppose also they were looking at the range of options they had. The minimum sentence under the law by which Mr. Lai was charged carries a 10-year sentence. I always thought that it was unlikely that they would go for the minimum available. The maximum, of course, was life imprisonment. But by giving him 20 years, as you've said in your report, at the age of 78 and with deteriorating health, 20 years is in effect a life sentence, and you could say actually a death sentence. So I suppose they've opted not to use the maximum sentence, but they've created the same effect.
Yeah, and Jimmy Lai's son is echoing something similar today. Speaking, he said, quote, "This sentence is devastating for our family and life-threatening for my father." So I want you to take a look at the full clip here of Sebastian Lai.
The least Hong Kong and China can do is to send a 78-year-old man who's in ill health on a plane and send him back here. We're not asking the world. This isn't a hard thing for them to do. It's a very easy thing for them to do, and it's not a big thing for them to do.
So you heard what he said. Is this something China is likely to do? Won't it reflect badly on the Chinese regime among the international audience if Jimmy Lai stays in prison there and eventually dies in prison?
It certainly will reflect badly on them. And if indeed he dies in prison, then he will die a martyr for freedom. And my question, both for Beijing and the Hong Kong authorities and for the international community, is do they want a martyr for freedom in a Hong Kong jail to die? Does the international community want that death on its conscience? And so, yes, I think there is a chance that having made an example of him by giving him this extremely harsh sentence, if there is enough international pressure on Beijing from Britain, from the United States, from other governments, to release Mr. Lai on humanitarian grounds, given his age and his poor health, if there's enough pressure, then I think there's a possibility they might do that. Having, as I say, made the example of him, they may decide that it's in their interests to allow him to go. But we have to work for that.
So you said earlier that the court could have went with the life sentence, but decided to go with 20 years. Can you just comment a bit more on this sentence? What does this say about Hong Kong's justice system?
Well, it says that Hong Kong's justice system has lost any semblance of independence and of the rule of law. This was a totally bogus case. It was deliberately drawn out far too long, over 2 years. Jimmy Lai was denied, for example, his first choice of legal counsel at the start of the trial. And the evidence provided by the prosecution was evidence that would not stand up at all in any genuine court of law. For example, I myself was named multiple times in the trial. I was named 95 times in the judgment. And what was I named for? For meetings and conversations with Jimmy Lai, which revolved around the situation in Hong Kong, the values of human rights and democracy, journalism, our shared Catholic faith, and other personal interests in our families and other daily concerns. That's what we talked about. those are not criminal acts. So the charges themselves were politically motivated. It was a kangaroo court, and the rule of law and independence of the judiciary is totally shredded in Hong Kong.
You were named 95 times. That is so shocking and ridiculous at the same time. I also wanted to ask you this. So, Jimmy Lai, of course, was the former publisher of pro-democracy newspaper in Hong Kong, Apple Daily. Do you think Hong Kong's freedom of the press will ever recover after this?
I don't think it will recover anytime soon, and it won't recover under this current regime. It has been really torn apart. Virtually every independent media outlet has been shut down, and many journalists have either been jailed or silenced or gone into exile. So the chances of it recovering anytime soon are low. But as and when there is change in China and change comes to Hong Kong, then Hong Kong people are remarkably entrepreneurial, and they will revive press freedom when it's possible to do so.
Okay, Ben, just one final thing. Can you just summarize for us what is the current stage of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement, and could there be an uprising of protests once more to the one and the level that we saw in 2019 and 2020?
Well, I would say Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement is certainly not dead, but it is not visible. It is not possible for it to be visible at the moment because the regime has cracked down so severely on all the basic fundamental freedoms. But I believe it lives on in spirit. I don't believe the Hong Kong people have given up. As to whether another large-scale protest might take place, it's hard to predict, and often these things happen when we least expect them. What I do know is that the consequences could be very severe for Hong Kongers, so Hong Kongers will perhaps be trying to find more creative ways to protest rather than taking to the streets because of the level of repression at the moment. But certainly I think their spirit is still there, and they will continue to find ways to resist, even if they have to be more creative.
So I said earlier it was shocking to hear that your name came up 95 times for talking to Jimmy Lai. I wonder if my name will come up 95 times for talking to you about talking to about Jimmy Lai. Well, anyways, Ben, thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you very much.